Welcome to part 2 of creating delegates, and we're going to continue right where we ended in part 1. And if you remember, we created a delegate, then we instantiated a delegate object off of our delegate. We used it to call a method in our C class, and this is how we connected that method to our delegate, and this is how we invoked it. I'm going to show you another way we can create another delegate object, but first I'm going to comment these out so that they don't confuse us, and I'll show you a different way to do this now. I'm going to do a do it to delegate, so both of them will still be working, but the way I'm going to do this is the way you would do a class. I'm going to mention the type, which is do method. That's my delegate type. I'm going to call it do it to, and that creates it. And notice I got the green squiggly under do it to, and it's just telling me that it's declared but never used. And so now I'm going to point, well, if I don't fat finger it, do it to, I want to point it to C dot do that. All right. And so now I have a new delegate object called do it to. It is pointed to, or do that is subscribed to it is another way I can say that. And then I'm just going to call do it to. Notice it sees both of my delegates, and I am going to pass it a string. Okay, and I'm going to say called do that from do it to. All right. And if I close that out properly, that will work. All right, so notice this time we've got another delegate now, and it's going to call do that. So I'll click the button here. Do that was called, and called do that from do it to. Pretty straightforward, right? Now, so let's talk about some really cool things we can do with this, all right? So we've now seen how to create these delegates and then how to assign or subscribe some things, but there's some other really cool things that we can do. Now, so far, do it is pointing to do this. Now, could I change do it to point to do that? Yes, I can, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do it. Do it right now points to do this, all right? So let's just call something here and let you see this. All right, and I am going to comment these out so we don't see them. So we're going to call do it test, and let's see what runs on that. And so we click our button. Class 1 do this was called and sent test right there. Okay, we want to change this. We want to point it to something else. So here's how we're going to go about doing this. This is how you'll use this when you're working with events. So we're going to say do it minus equal, put a space in there, minus equal C dot do this. Okay. Now I want to show you something here. Do it right now is not pointed at anything. All right. So I'm going to comment that out, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to call do it, and I'm going to pass it mark. But keep in mind, it's not pointed at anything, so I'm going to get an exception here. And it's going to run a minute, and it's going to sit there and think, and it's going to say, hey, wait a minute, I don't know what you're talking about. You've pointed me at something, and there's not anything here. It's called a null reference exception, was unhandled, okay? So we want to check for those in real code, but there's a way to fix that. We can now set do it, just like we use the minus equal to unsubscribe do this. We can use the plus equal to subscribe do that. A lot of power in those sentences right there, in those statements, I should say. Notice right here, we're unsubscribing do this. We are subscribing do that. All right, now I'm going to take this one off, and the first time this runs, do it test is going to be pointed to do that, because that is where we actually pointed it right here. Okay. So the first thing that's going to happen, we're going to call do it one pointed to do this. Right here's where it happened. I'm going to put that back on there. Let me confuse you here. This is kind of tough to keep straight sometimes. So here's where we created do it, and we pointed it to do this. Okay. Then we're going to run it, and we'll see it's do this. Then we're going to take do this away from it. We're going to subscribe do that to it and run it. And we're going to see we're calling the same delegate object. And just based on our subscription here, we're going to change where they're pointing. So we're looking for a do this and then a do that. All right. So we click our button, do this was called and sent test. We click this, do that was called and sent mark. And both of those came from that one delegate. All right. If you can get your head around that, you can see a lot that's going on here. Okay. Now I want to show you something else that we can do really quickly. Do one more and do a method called do it 3. And I'm going to set do it 3 equal to do it plus do it 2. That makes sense? Now, and notice I'm not even pointing to the methods. I am just pointing to the particular actual delegates that I have, and I'll have to unsubscribe do it 2 where I set it up. So I'm gonna call do it 1 and do it 2. Now do it right now is pointed to do that, and I'll just leave that alone. Okay, and so I will then notice I will just call do it 3 and pass it multi. Okay. And I'll execute that, and we're going to see our test and our mark, and then we're going to see a multi. Okay, so there's our test, there's call from test, and then notice this sent mark, and then we're getting multi for 1, multi for 2. All right, now this multi part is the magic in events. Okay, if you can get everything else and then add this to it, because this is what we do to subscribe multiple methods to an event, and then all those methods get called. Running a little long in this video, but if you can do this simple example a few times, get comfortable with it, you're going to do a lot with delegates. And so this is going to be the basis for working with events. So I look forward to talking to you about those later on in the course.